right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Women of Color in Cannabis for our May Cannabis session, Can I Cultivate? We appreciate everyone for making the rescheduled date. And if you were unable to and you're joining us via the rewatch or replay, thank you so much for clicking the link and watching this session with us today. Today's discussion is going to be all about the conditional adult use cultivation licenses. The application will be closed in June 30th, but we'll tell you all about that a little bit later on. But once again, thank you for joining us, and let's kick this thing off. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, we are Women of Color in Cannabis. That is WOCC, pronounced woke. We are a federally recognized 501c3 organization. And the simplest way to understand what we are and what we do is we are an education-based organization. So we are non-plant touching. We do not sell any cannabis. We do not, work with the plant. But we do help facilitate the entrance into the cannabis industry for people of color and other marginalized groups. We do that by providing education, trying to help folks increase their skill sets, meeting folks who can actually help them and who actually understand what it's like to walk a mile in a person's of color shoes in America these days. So we usually have sessions once a month that tackle informational updates, sectors in the cannabis industry, or even just cultural conversations like Mom's Marijuana Time, or even Me Too and Marijuana. We also have some very, very serious sections like National Expungement Week participation, where we're talking about expunging records. But today we're talking about the licensing process. If you're interested in learning more about WOCC at large, our monthly sessions, or even our Careers program, which is separate, it's all about getting a job in the cannabis industry, please visit our website at wocc.world, or you can follow us on Instagram at _WOCC. So let's start our presentation about conditional licensing. So there's quite a few things we're going to talk about because this is a license. So we want to make sure that you have all the information that you need. So first, we're just going to talk about setting the stage, right? How do we get to this point? When did cannabis become legal in New York State? What's just the general happenings as far as time or a timeline is concerned for all things in New York State cannabis, right? But then we're going to talk about who is eligible for the adult use conditional cultivation licenses. Unfortunately, there are quite a few requirements that thins out who is eligible for these licenses. So it is a smaller population. So we will walk you through all the things you need to qualify to even apply. So once again, it doesn't mean you qualify to get a license. It means you qualify to apply. You will go through the process and you may or may not receive a license. We're just here to help you increase your chances by answering any possible questions that we think you may have, but also the next section, what do you need? So we'll go through the application, not in its entirety, because there are resources which we'll show you how to access on the Office of Cannabis Management's website. But we're just going to go through some of the slides that we think may be tricky, some of the application parts that you need to answer in a specific way in order to not, or you may have to answer an additional piece of paperwork depending on that part. But we're really going to do a deep dive, which brings us to reading the fine print. So we're going to make sure that we go through all the little, everything's important. So even if it may be little, all the sections of the application that may, go overlooked. So just think of this part as just the details. And then lastly is the long road. We're going to answer questions like, what if I get a license? How do I set up my growing operations once I've been given my license? If I don't want to have this license anymore, can I give it away? Any possible, well, not any, but most questions that we think you may have. And once again, this is also covered by resources on the Office of Cannabis Management, which we'll link to in this presentation, but also discuss as well. So let's kick things off. So setting the stage, right? We know that, or maybe we don't know, but cannabis legalization is relatively new. And when we say relatively new, we mean as recent as last year, right? So March 31st, the end of the month, finally cannabis was legalized in New York State. So that includes upstate New York, like Rochester or Syracuse, but it also includes, New York City, all the 5 boroughs, et cetera. So prior to 2021, We did have a medical program, but now we have a THC adult use recreational program that ushered in a lot of wonderful things like being able to consume anywhere where you can consume cigarettes, other awesome things like being able to gift to friends or family, so not sell, but gifting, and even just expanding the conversation of home grow, retail dispensaries, etc. But what it also did, a little later on last year, was make sure that there's some kind of governmental body to usher in the new legal state of cannabis in New York, right? So New York just wanted to make sure that, now that it's legal, we have to start releasing, legislation, basically the rules of the land, regulation to say how you can function in the cannabis industry, what parts of the cannabis industry are accessible here in New York State, et cetera. So the Office of Cannabis Management was created as a result of cannabis being legalized in the MRTA bill, right? So we knew through the MRTA that you could be able to do things like delivery, like manufacturing, like micro businesses. But once again, they had to make sure that there was a governmental body creating all that fun stuff. What we really got by the end of last year, but beginning of this year, and we see that some of the years were cut off, so apologies. So basically, they signed a new bill and it created the adult use cultivator license. So basically what that means is for this period in time, until the updated and more permanent licensing is released, there is this period in which you can grow cannabis to support legal sales. Because if legal sales are to start by the end of this year, they actually need product to sell in these dispensaries. So the conditional cultivator license is not a license that you'll have indefinitely or forever. It is for a period of time, and we will discuss what that period of time is a little bit later on in the process. So after this bill, Bill S-880, 84, -A, blah, 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 was signed, it opened up the application process once again for the adult use conditional. So conditional is just talking about the time period. It's not forever. And those applications opened on March 15th. Now, don't think you've missed the boat. There is still opportunity to apply because applications end June 30th. So you still have approximately a month to go through this presentation, watch this recording. We also listed additional resources at the end of this presentation. So you have enough time, a month, to work through everything and submit your application if you are one of the folks that are eligible to apply for this application. Next slide. Perfect. So with that being said, who is eligible? And just a little update, just in case you wanted to know, so far, there has been over 200 applications to the Office of Cannabis Management just for the adult use conditional cultivator license. So that should give you a little bit of an insight into what the competition is going to look like for other licenses that will eventually come out. But it doesn't mean, once again, that you should not apply if you are eligible, because the application period is still open until the 30th. And I believe correctly, there is no cap, especially for social equity applicants. So you are still encouraged to apply. So who's eligible? You had to be a hemp grower in New York State legally in order to participate in the application process for the adult use conditional cultivator license. So if you were a part of the Department of Agriculture and Markets Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Program, which basically means you have a license from this department saying that you were legally able to sell hemp, that is like the big bucket ticket item that says you are eligible to apply for this conditional cultivator license. Next slide, please. So that's not all. That's just the really big bucket. So were you able to, legally grow hemp, right? Now, when we say hemp, specifically, the Office of Cannabis Management is speaking about CBD hemp. So if we know the cannabis plant, we know that there's kind of two of the larger branches. There's smaller branches like CBG, et cetera. But the two branches we most frequently talk about is CBD and THC. So if we're talking about prior to THC legalization, we were encouraging folks who were growing hemp to grow CBD hemp, right? There's different varieties of hemp, including grain hemp or fiber hemp. But for the Office of Cannabis Management, they were asking folks to not only participate in the industrial hemp program, but specifically grow CBD derivative hemp, right? But you have to prove that. You can't just say, hey, as a part of this program, I grew hemp. you have to be able to provide that certification from that Department of Agriculture and Market saying that you were able legally to grow hemp. And specifically, they're looking for 2 years of experience, and they provide a time period. So anywhere between 2018 to 2021. Let's say, for example, things weren't looking good for you, the end of 2020 to 2021, but you did have that growing experience in 2018 and 2019 prior to COVID. You were still included in that eligible folder and encouraged to participate. But secondly, and I think most importantly, is that you have to hold at least 51% of ownership in the entity that was in the hemp research pilot program. So if you were a minority owner, unfortunately, you did not qualify to, attempt this application based on that hemp business, right? You have to have an ownership stake in there, so 51% or more. So if you were somewhere like 25%, 15%, anything like that, unfortunately, this does not qualify for you having experience for a licensed hemp business to the Department of Agriculture. So if you were not the owner, the majority owner, unfortunately, even if you had that experience of growing hemp, if you knew that you were a business that had their license through the Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Program, because you're not that owner, you cannot call on that experience. So, sorry. So what do you need to apply? Obviously, we know that you're going to need the usual things. So primary contact information, not only for yourself, but maybe you have a business partner, primary contact information, your name, first and last, obviously, but you're also going to need your business location. So we're obviously talking about cultivation, right? So we're going to tell you specifically the types of addresses you need to think of, but the primary information, where you're going to do a bulk of your business, that information is very important. You need that really upfront in the application. Once again, there is a portal where you will apply. So in case we didn't mention it, and we probably didn't, so apologies, the application is completely virtual. You are applying for the adult use cultivation license, conditional cultivation license via an online portal. So when you go to the Office of Cannabis Management, and once again, we linked to the website and how you can access the application, the additional resources in this presentation. So do not worry about having to track it down or find it. But it's completely virtual. So you're going to upload all of this information. So the primary contact information is going to be amongst the first things you see once you sign into the application and create your kind of I'm blanking on the word, but your profile. That's going to be one of the first things that you actually put into the program. So if you're trying to open a business, hopefully, at this point, you've been operating in hemp for quite some time. You have that 2 years of experience and maybe more, but you're still going to need a business plan. You're asking to do something new. You're venturing into THC, cannabis growth. So the Office of Cannabis Management definitely wants you to create a business plan and outline a few things, right? And there are some very important things to outline. For example, your organizational structure. So yes, you're the founder, you're the CEO, but who else is going to be working with you? Do you have a staff? And if so, what are their positions, right? You also want to have any of your organizational charts. So you want to physically or visually, I should say, represent the structures of your business, not only in the growing aspects of things, but also on the business sides of things. Who's your CFO? Who's your accountant? Once again, the Office of Cannabis Management provides details and guidance into how you should demonstrate that information. But also a big bucket that we wanted to speak about was capitalization tables. So you may be familiar with, the organizational structure or even an organization chart, but you may not be familiar with the capitalization tables. So we want to take one moment to just pull that out and just explain a little bit further what that is. So specifically, we know that cannabis is a big business. And one way that they ensure that not only social equity applicants, but just applicants in general aren't being taken advantage of in order to do business is not only through that 51% ownership of your business, but also understanding how you're being funded and what the share of profits will be. And that's exactly what the capitalization tables show or demonstrate. It says, based on this position, or here is this position, this is the person who sits here, this is their percentage of revenue, or this is the percentage of money that they have invested into us. So you may not always have someone who is an investor, but they may definitely be getting some type of revenue share. So the capitalization chart just wants you to break out those buckets as far as the positions, what is the percentage of revenue that this person may be seeing, or on the adverse, who invested in your company, how much percentage did they invest of your total operating budget, and things like that nature. Which brings me to the last point of disclosing any sources of proposed sources of capital. So if you have a promissory note, someone who says they will give you this amount of money, you also want to include that as well in your business plan, because there is language in the bill to, allow certain MSOs to partner with businesses, but there are percentages of ownership that have to be maintained. And the capitalization tables and organization charts is a great way to outline that and demonstrate that to the Office of Cannabis Management. Next slide.
Before we move on, I'd like to point out, for anyone that feels a little bit overwhelmed at the prospect of needing to put together a business plan, you guys can feel free to check out our past Canna session if you're a Woke World member. That's our membership program called All About the Benjamins. We cover in depth the different parts of a business plan that you need to remember to include to have one that passes muster.
And thank you. That wonderful voice is Sammy, our operations lead, who is guiding us through this presentation. So thank you, Sammy, for reminding everyone. And just to reiterate what she said, if you need any help with your business plan and you are a Woke World member, speaking of members, we have just relaunched our membership program, Woke World, with 3 new monthly options starting from $5. So if you're interested, you can sign up, tap in just to watch that All About the Benjamin section, or session, I should say. And in that session, we have a wonderful hour and a half, I think maybe 2-hour discussion about how to build a business plan, which you definitely have to include, and the ways to stand out in your business plan. So thank you, Sammy. So let's continue. So you've provided your primary information, you've provided your organization structure, you've let the Office of Cannabis Management know who's invested in your company, who's going to invest in your company, who is going to be a part of the infrastructure and your operations, and also the revenue split or revenue share. But there's more. Right? As we mentioned, you have to provide documentation saying that you were in good standing with the Department of Agriculture and Markets, that you were a participant in their hemp program, and that you've been growing CBD-derived hemp. This is where you provide it. So the application is actually going to provide you with a upload function where you're asked to upload that information, that documentation, to testify to the fact that you have experience in this time frame. You had this licensure, you were in good standing, all that good stuff. But then there's also going to be terms and conditions. So this is a separate document. The terms and condition is a document that is currently on the Office of Cannabis Management, and it outlines basically what you think when you think of terms and conditions, basically saying, hey, I'm an applicant, I've completed this application, I am being truthful, I am being honest. If awarded a license, I will follow the rules. I am aware of the rules. And it's basically just saying that you took your time to read through the application, read through the conditions, and that you are testifying that everything you're saying is honest and true. So once again, that's a separate document that you would sign and upload through the virtual portal. So this part, or the next part, I should say, is where it gets not tricky, but where it's really important. So since we are talking once again about the adult use conditional cultivation license, you need to provide information on each proposed location. Now, what that means is you may have somewhere where you're doing business. So maybe it's just your office where, your accountant is housed, where your CEO, your CFO, all the people that kind of keep the lights on and the show going. But then you have another location where you're going to do your growing, your cultivation, right? Your processing. You want to make sure that you're providing information on both. But when specifically talking about the growing operation, you really want to make sure that you have a site plan. When you're outlining how the growing operation is going to be structured, where are you running your lights? Where is the, your water, your irrigation system is going to be? You want to get as detailed as possible. So not only does it include floor plans, but diagrams. You also want GPS coordinates. So where are these locations physically located? What's in the general area? Where is it in proximity to other places? And it might even be helpful to do an aerial photograph of the premises, so we can, or the Office of Cannabis Management can really get a feel of what you are attempting to do. So once again, that is for each proposed location. If you are proposing several growing operations or multiple sites of businesses, you want to make sure that you provide the information for all of those locations. Okay, so this is probably the part that everyone wants to know. How much is the application? So we can say luckily, depending on how you feel, but the application isn't 10,000, 5,000, comparable to some other states that we might have heard of, but the application fee is 2,000. Unfortunately, it is a non-refundable fee. So whether you are awarded a adult use conditional cultivation license or not, you will not be receiving that $2,000 application feedback. But I guess a silver lining that can make you feel a little bit better about your $2,000 is, I don't know if anyone has heard or is familiar with the $200 or $250 fund or social equity fund that will be used to fund community education community education events, funding other community work, possibly grants to community organizers. That $200 to $250 million pool, part of their collection process is not only revenue from dispensaries and other applications, but also the application cost. So your $2,000 will go to future applicants once the permanent licensing applications open up to kind of help divert their costs, but also community programming, community activists, etc. Unfortunately for you in this moment, it is not refundable, but hopefully you feel some kind of solace knowing that your money is going to a social equity fund to be used by social equity applicants in the future. WOCC understands that this is an issue, so we are working to do what we can to possibly be able to provide any kind of financial opportunities or discounts. So please stay tuned. We are working in the background to figure that out, and hopefully we will make some headway and can provide some kind of financial assistance to applicants, not only this application round, but for future licensing as well. Okay, so we went over basically the high level concept things, which you're going to see really in the beginning part of the application. And now we're going to do kind of like a deeper dive into some of the intricacies of the application. Okay, so don't be surprised, or don't be scared. I know this looks like a lot of information. We're not asking you to read that gray text box or anything like that. So for one, this is just a screenshot of what the actual portal looks like. So when you sign in, we already took you through that business profile section if you're looking on the, your left panel. So that's where you're going to put your primary contact information, any of your co-founders, your staff primary contact information. That's where you're going to put, some of your business information. But now you have to take a deep dive and they're asking you for your entity type. So this part is really important because they give you a few options, right? You can be an individual or sole proprietor, which means you're basically running the show. You have majority ownership. You alone are responsible for this. You alone are, the person on the paperwork that incorporates your business. There's no one else legally liable or on your incorporation paperwork or your business paperwork, right? Partnership means there's someone else there, right? You're in a partnership with whether it's someone or some kind of entity. And then you also have a corporation, nonprofit, etc. What's important here is that there is a part of the application a little further down the road that's called the child support attestation. So I guess it really doesn't matter how we feel about it, but what's included in the application is if you are a person who is 4 months behind in child support payment, if you are someone who has to pay child support, if you're more than 4 months delinquent, you will not be eligible to apply for an adult use conditional cultivation license. So even if you're in good standing everywhere else, you had a hemp business, you were growing for 2 years between that 2018 and 2021 period, you owned 51% of the business that qualified for that hemp license and participated in that program. If you're behind on your child support, and you're a sole proprietor, you're not going to get your license. So it's very important to answer this honestly and openly. If you are a sole proprietor, you will have to complete the child support attestation, as opposed to if you were a partnership or in a corporation. Once again, there will be more information through the links that we provided you on the child support attestation, but similar to the terms and conditions, it is a separate PDF that you read through, that you would virtually sign and that you would upload. And it gives you a little bit more detail, but basically if you are delinquent in your child support, you have to let them, and by them, I mean the Office of Cannabis Management, know, and it will affect your eligibility for the adult use conditional cultivation license. Next slide, please. Perfect. Okay. So business addresses. Once again, like we mentioned, and we just want to make sure that we're zoning in on this, you want to provide the location for all your business operations. So not only where you are growing and cultivating and processing, those are different locations, which, we recommend that they're not, but also, like I said, where your actual, infrastructure, business infrastructure behind the scenes folks are working, you want to provide that information in the application as well. And you want to make sure that it's current and that it's updated information. You also want to include your mailing address. So if that's different, let's say I'm not sure what your setup is, but you're growing and maybe more of a warehouse location, which you don't feel safe having your mail come there because it may get lost in all the operational things that are happening, machinery. So you have a separate location where it is you receive your mail. You want to reflect that as well, just to ensure that you are receiving the updates from the Office of Cannabis Management and it is not getting lost maybe in your processing and cultivation plant or even your accounting department, which sometimes can be a standalone physical department. You just want to make sure that you're providing all the ways in which you are doing business, or all the places, in which you're doing business for this license. Okay. Once again, so we're not asking you to read any of these things, but these are screenshots from the portal. So you do want to indicate, are you eligible to apply? So they're going to ask you a series of questions, which we went through earlier in the slides. Have you been growing, CBD? So not fiber derived, but that CBD derived hemp in the past 4 years between 2018 and 2021? Are you in good standing with the Department of Agriculture and Markets? And you're just going to indicate that. But then you're also, like we mentioned before, going to upload that into the portal so that you're demonstrating that you're actually in good standing and you're not just asking them to believe you on good faith. Okay. Once again, business addresses, mailing addresses, providing all the information, local information for where you'll be doing business under this license. Okay, I think we did, are you going back, Sammy? I think we may be going back to the forward.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay. So, you may or may not know, but included in the language for the MRTA, so the bill that actually ushered in legalization in New York State, there are certain populations that will get special attention, that the Office of Cannabis Management and the cannabis industry at large want to have a higher level of interest and, just maybe support services for certain populations as they go through the license process or application. So this is your opportunity to kind of indicate that you are a part of these populations if you do qualify. So are you a minority as it is defined to the Office of Cannabis Management? So are you a person of color? This is also where you indicate if you are female owned and operated. This is also where you demonstrate, have you ever been through the criminal justice system, and specifically for cannabis? So the Office of Cannabis Management wants to make sure that, the populations that have been historically kind of boxed out of the industry, especially at large, that they have at least a fighting chance in participating in the industry. So if you are a woman, if you are a minority person, if you're a person, once again, who's been through the war on drugs, this is your opportunity to let the Office of Cannabis Management know. And that puts you in a bucket of that special population that they want to make sure are getting these licenses, so that it's not just MSOs and folks who may not have been ravaged by the war on drugs that are getting these licenses, but that we're providing opportunities for reparations for folks who may have been victims of the war on drugs. So this part is very, very important. If you qualify, or anyone, and the great thing about this, so in case we didn't mention it, if anyone in your business structure qualifies as well, you can say that as well. So if anyone else in your ownership structure, so your partners, your your members who are getting significant stake in the profits, if you have not been the person that has been arrested, but your partner is, you'd indicate that as well. So you do not have to be the person who is the person who went through the criminal system. You don't have to be the minority in the situation. You don't have to be the female in the situation. But if there's anyone in your ownership structure as reflected in that organizational chart, you can reflect that and get that special attention that you so rightly deserve. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what am I getting in this license? I understand that it's a conditional cultivation license, but how am I going to process it? How am I going to sell this? What happened, right? So there's some do's and there's some don'ts, right? So what you cannot do, we'll start there, is any form of extraction. So you can't distill, you can't make any tinctures, any kind of concentrates. That is not the purpose of this cultivation license. It is to provide the flower that will sustain the upcoming, adult use sales. So pre-rolls are included in this bracket, so you are able to produce pre-rolls under this cultivation license, but any other form of extraction, any kind of shatter, oil, anything like that is not permissible. What you can do is you can grow your flower product indoor or outdoor, right? It gives you up to 2 years of growing ability, and that is 2 years from the day you are awarded. So it is not from the, March 15th application opening date. It's from the day you receive notice from the Office of Cannabis Management saying, hey, you can start growing legal cannabis. That is when your clock starts. But the Office of Cannabis Management understands that there are no licenses right now open for the distribution, for any kind of delivery services, for any kind of manufacturing or packaging. So they understand you're kind of going to be able to or need to wear multiple hats. So with this conditional license, you'll also be able to manufacture and distribute your flower product in addition to the cultivating that you'll be doing. And this is actually great because you don't need a processor or distributor license, at least not for this conditional period. So remember, we're talking about the conditional cultivation license, conditional meaning temporary time. So there will be a point in time where regular conditional licenses with an updated terms of use, so who knows, it may be 4 years, 5 years, those will be released somewhere in the future. But for these conditional licenses, you will be able to process and distribute. But that's going to change in the future. But for right now, you're good to go to not only cultivate, but also manufacture and distribute your flower product. Okay, so just a little bit more information what you can do with your license. Like we mentioned, 2 years from the date of issuance, so that's very important. Remember, keep in your mind, when it is that you applied for your license and when you were awarded. And then you can only have one license. So you can't say, oh my God, I want a license, I'm going to apply again. No, you've been given one conditional cultivator license that is your license. Now, what that also means is even, let's say right now, the Office of Cannabis Management is currently in discussion for the conditional retail license. That guidance hasn't been provided yet. Women of Color in Cannabis will do a session on that when the guidance is open and the application process is open as well. But for now, it's only the conditional cultivator. What that means is when the conditional retail license opens, you cannot apply for one of those. You're only eligible to have one license at a time. So if future licenses come out while you are still in good standing and operation of your conditional cultivation license, you cannot apply. We'll talk about your options because you can transfer license. So we'll talk about that a little further down. But if you are in ownership of a license, you cannot attempt another license. The cutoff for all of the licenses that are awarded under this conditional umbrella is June 30th, 2024. So let's say, no one basically should be awarded a license after that period in time. So you should be awarded prior to that. So you should still be in your 2 years of compliance. But basically after June 30th, 2024, the conditional cultivator license are no longer applicable because there will be an updated cultivator license for a new time period, and it will no longer be a conditional standing of operation. Okay, so now we're getting into even more of the fine print because you're probably wondering to yourself, okay, so I already had a growing operation. Obviously, that's what made me eligible. I've been growing hemp for 2 years. I have this really great setup. I have an indoor grow. I'm thinking I just use that space, right? The answer is no. right? So it's very important that you know that you cannot use the hemp space to grow your, THC adult use cannabis product. You have to make sure that it is completely separate. If you're still operating your hemp license, that's great. Maybe you've chosen to sunset that operation, or maybe you're going to run them concurrently. It's up to you. But what you cannot do is have them operate in the same space. Not to say it cannot be the same building, but they can't be in the same physical location. For example, you can't say, oh yeah, this is my hemp section, and we take 2 steps to our left, and this is my, THC section. You really have to make sure that there's a separation of your hemp cultivation, production, and your THC production. But you also want to make sure that you are providing the documentation saying that you're either leasing your space or that you own your space. Basically, the Office of Cannabis Management wants to make sure that this will be the space that you will be producing your flower product for the length of your licensor or licensing. So they want to make sure that this is the space, and through paperwork, you can demonstrate whether you're leasing it or whether you own the space. Now, depending on whether you're growing indoor or growing outside, they provide some different guidance on the actual physical space requirements of your growing operation. So for example, you can grow on up to 1 acre outdoors, but up to 25,000 square feet if you are growing indoor. So there is additional guidance on the Office of Cannabis Management that will give you a lot more down to how many light bulbs and type of light bulbs that you can use, suggestions on your water irrigation systems. So you can find all of that in the resources that we link at the end of this presentation as well. Okay. So this part we thought was very interesting and definitely wanted to put on the radar for anyone who is eligible. If you're worried about how am I going to afford this space, now I have to find a completely new space separate from my hemp space. I have to make sure that I can afford it, keep the lights on. What can I do? The good thing is you can actually share spaces with other conditional cultivator licensees. So up to 4 license holders can share facilities. So if you have a friend that want a license, or maybe they aren't your friend, but they want a license and they may have a substantial space, you may want to contact them. It would be worthwhile for all parties involved. It's definitely a way to reduce costs to share space. And legally, it is permissible for you to share space, but only up to 4 licensees. So no more than 4. Much like the differentiation that they want you to have in space between your hemp and your THC grows, they want that for each licensee. So even though you guys are all growing THC product, you all are legally allowed to grow together because you guys hold different licensing. So you'll probably be growing different strains and you need to track your grow. The Office of Cannabis Management wants to make sure that you are separating all the different growing operations per licensee. So if there was ever to be a site check by the Office of Cannabis Management, which happens, as you can see, submit all agreements related to the sharing of facilities and request approval, they will have to walk the space and basically be able to say, okay, this is one growing operation, that's another, and that's another. If they aren't able to kind of differentiate the growing operations, that will be a problem and may affect your good standing of your application. So we do want to mention that once you are in good standing, doesn't mean that you'll continue to be in good standing. If you are not following the rules, you are risking the good standing classification of your license, and your license could be paused or even taken away. Okay. So 2 kind of caveats. If you are looking to lease a space if you're looking to lease a space part of a group, that's good to do. But maybe you're the person that has the large piece of land, or you have the large indoor growing operation, you are able to lease that space as well. So if you are the person sitting in the driver's seat who says, hey, I want to help some folks out who may be struggling with the space, you are able to do so. But once again, you need to have that in writing, not only with you, but with the person that you will be leasing the space to as well. And both of you have to provide that information to the Office of Cannabis Management. So you have to make sure across all parties, you as the person, whether or not you are the one leasing or you are the one providing the opportunity to lease, but all parties have to let the Office of Cannabis Management know. And once again, you have to make sure that they're all delineated growing operations as separate. Okay, So we know it's a lot. Hopefully you're keeping up with us. We don't have much more to go through. So you're probably wondering, I think I've done everything as best as I can. I filled out my application. I've listed who has a stake in my business, what their stake is, who's investing, what they're getting back. I provided my site plans. I took my drone photos. Everything is, or my Google photos, that works too. I think I have a really good application. I put in everything in. What happens? It is about a 3 to 8 week application review. We understand that we have about a month left. So we're still in that 8-week bracket, so maybe like 6 weeks, but it does take a while for the Office of Cannabis Management to review the application. Now, it isn't just a one-stop shop. There is the Office of Cannabis Management, but then there's also the Cannabis Control Board. So the Cannabis Control Board is an entity that sits under the Office of Cannabis Management. And basically they are the board that makes the decisions on, what the licenses will look like, how long the application will be open, and they also review the applications. So after the Office of Cannabis Management, that kind of parent organization, looks at the application, they send it over to the Cannabis Control Board, and the Cannabis Control Board will vote. And if they vote yay, you'll be getting an application, right? So you'll be, not an application, sorry. You'll be receiving a license. So you will receive some notice that lets you know you have been awarded a license. So it's very important that you do not begin your sales until you get that notice, right? So after you get that notice, there's a few things that have to happen and within a pretty tight turnaround. So within 6 months, so you have a little bit of time to kind of get your bearings, figure out the lay of the land, start, growing, setting up your cultivation, build, working with your team, because you should already have your team. You want to make sure that you sign a labor peace agreement. So, and with a bona fide labor organization, which basically means a labor union. So you want to basically go into some kind of agreement that says, hey, we are looking out for our workforce. We're making sure that they have an avenue in which to, share any grievances that they have with us as the operators. We're making sure that there is an independent party that is going to be lobbying on behalf of our employees that are not biased to us as the company holders. So that part is very important to make sure that your employees are not being taken advantage of. But then you also have to provide a copy of that. So much like the eligibility requirements, you can't just say that you signed a labor peace agreement, excuse me. You actually have to provide that paperwork to attest to that. And once again, that's within 6 months of getting your license. So if you do not get that in within the 6 months, once again, your good standing eligibility will come into question. And not only could your license be paused, but once again, it could be taken away as well. Okay, so that is the entire presentation. I know we went through a lot. If you have any questions, even if you're catching this replay, please feel free to send us questions. We can send them to the Office of Cannabis Management. We attend the office, the Cannabis Control Board meetings as well when they ask for comment periods. We do have the opportunity to provide feedback on any of the licenses before they're released. So we ask you to, keep in mind and keep an eye on the Office of Cannabis Management. We do have a link on our Instagram that can take you to their website, so you also know when the meetings are happening and when new legislature and licenses are open. So yeah, if you have any questions, not only about this application or this process, please reach out to us so we can help you. And if we can't give you direct answers, we can find someone who can give you direct answers. We also have some resources that we'd like to walk you through really quickly.
Oh, that must be, here we go.
Okay. So yes, we have a few resources. So for one, I know we kept mentioning the Office of Cannabis Management because they exist as a resource for us, but also as a resource for us all as community members who are interested in whether it's participation or just making sure that promises are kept that were outlined in the MRTA. So for one, you can find the frequently asked questions specifically for the application, and it'll walk you through, all of the possible questions about how do you apply, when do you apply, what's needed, what's not needed, etc. You can also find the terms and conditions. Like we said, that is a separate document that you have to read through, download, and sign. But once again, it tells you things. It's just asking you to demonstrate that everything you send in your application is true, that you have filled it out in good conscience, you meet the eligibility requirements, and you're aware of it, all those extra things as well. And then we also have the red line application mockup. So luckily the Office of Cannabis Management, as you saw in the presentation, those screenshots that we shared with you, you can go through the entire application mockup where there's text box that kind of give you further instruction on how to fill out the actual application that is on the website as well. But then we also wanted to provide you as WOCC members and community members, some trusted resources specifically around cannabis farmers, but also POC cannabis farmers and New York farmers who kind of understand, you know, the lay of the land as it is right now, but can also help you with your application, answering any just general cultivation questions, or even as you think about something like your site plan, your growing operation, and you have some questions. We wanted to provide you some resources that we felt were safe, trusted, and that could really help you. So for one, that's the Black Farmers Fund. So once again, if you are a farmer, which you should be because you've been doing your hemp thing for the past 2 years, but you're trying to transition, there are some folks here who are cannabis farmers who can give you a little bit more information. There's also the New York Small Farmer Group. And one thing about them is they're a national organization. I mean, not national, statewide organization. So you'll be able to not only get some, you know, friends or network for folks who are in the city, but if you're someone who's watching this from Rochester, from Binghamton, from Syracuse, you'll be able to find some folks to network with from upstate as well. And then lastly, you can reach out to Damien Fagon, who is not only a member or faculty member, I should say, of the Medgar Evers Cannabis Program, but also sits on the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. And they have specific experience in growing cannabis, hemp-derived cannabis, hemp-derived cannabis, but also THC cannabis. He also has some folks in his network who has attempted this current licensing, who have been awarded this current licensing, so they can even be a resource to help you along through this specific application because they've been through the process. So this is included in the presentation that you will have access to. So feel free to reach out to any of these folks as well, and reach out to us once again if you have any questions or concerns as you fill this out. Like we said, there will be future sessions as the Office of Cannabis Management releases additional licensing applications. So please tune in, stay tapped in and focused on all things woke. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at _WOCC, or you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and visit us on our website at WOCC.world. And like we mentioned, we have a new membership program that is so cheap. We have options for $5, I think $10 and $15. It's monthly, so try it out, see if you like it. If you do, join us again for the next month. And if not, at least you got to pop in and see what we had created for our community members. So thank you so much for joining us. If you are attempting a license, please let us know. We want to help you, and we wish you luck, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.